Look at
we
that
enable
first attendee in
Q&A.
here. I already did it. You mean the
Sweet.
chat? You mean the chat, right?
Yeah,
I
enable
enabled the
chat.
chat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you say we got tendies? I did not have lunch today.
Dude,
We
I
got
could go for
tendies?
attendee. I
I
just
could
said,
go
look
for
at
some
that
attendees.
first attendee. There was just one
Oh,
for a
okay.
second, and it was
I mean,
our
I'm glad
whoever.
we have attendees too, but I'm also hungry, so just
It was
tendies.
one
You
of
know,
the
we
other
didn't
good
have
Michaels of the world, so
a
that's why I was
BS
making fun of it.
topic today. You know, I didn't have anything planned.
We never have anything planned,
Tendies,
hardly.
man.
Tendies.
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 Mm-hmm. Talking about
I'll just
tendies.
tell you, there are no good gluten-free tendies, so this is a sad subject for me.
Okay.
You find some?
Sarah, yeah, we have. I mean, I wouldn't say. Okay, look, are they good? Would I prefer them
Yeah,
over? Would I prefer them over normal tendies? No, right?
yeah.
But they're not too bad. The only thing is like the breading on them. Like I think they taste good. I eat them. I don't have to eat gluten free, and I eat them. But the one thing I found is that they like the breading kind of is weird, like kind of squishy and sticky
So I was gonna
afterwards.
say they're always
It,
soggy. That's the
it's not
problem.
soggy. No, they are
Not
crispy.
soggy?
They're not
Hmm.
soggy. It's just that when it compresses in your teeth, it's a weird
Oh,
feeling
yeah.
afterwards. You know what I mean? Like it's something that's
Yeah.
almost a little sticky afterwards. It's I don't know how to express it, but
Hmm.
There are some things. I mean, like I've told the other guys about this, but gluten-free Oreos are awesome. Like
haven't
I
had one.
think I prefer them to brownies. Brownies, gluten-free brownies to me are better than regular brownies. But yeah, the tendies I've not found a good substitute.
I'll hit you with the ones that we get, and you can
Do
give
it.
them a shot. They are at least crispy. I'll tell you that much. They're not
That's
soggy. I
a
mean,
huge improvement.
yeah,
I have to ask
but
Pink, like with these soggy tenders you're eating here, how are you cooking them?
I was gonna say depending
Yeah.
on how you cook them, at least, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, could probably do better with that, but like they're mostly like microwavy type
Oh,
things, right? Which is always going to be
Oh,
squishy.
yeah. Even
You can
normal tendies are gonna be squishy in a microwave.
you can skillet them or something and make them a little better. Maybe throw them on the broiler occasionally, but it's a lot of work, you know.
Just throw them in the oven for 15 minutes, man.
Ain't no way I got 15 minutes. No, no, you're right. You're
I
right.
mean,
yeah. Eric in the chat says
Air
try
fryer,
the air
yeah,
fryer.
it's a good
So,
call.
yeah, it's a good tip.
Would be a
I,
good
you know, I
call.
don't own an air fryer, but everybody I know that has one raves about the air fryer. I don't. I'm
I
a
don't.
deep fryer dude. I still like old
Yeah,
school cooking in oil, man. It's hard to beat.
I hate the
yeah.
concept of an air fryer, and every time someone mentions it, it bothers me. Because it's just a convection oven. Stop calling it an air fryer. It's an oven with air. Like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I do have to say the Fry Daddy. I mean, Fry Daddy is
Mhm,
what I grew up with. It's how I got to be a considerable size. So
mhm.
I'm on board with
Yeah,
Fry Daddy.
I'm on board with the fried Addy as well. Also, my favorite, since we're talking tendies, let's roll right into chicken wings. My favorite way to cook chicken wings is I smoke them first, and then after I smoke them, pop them in that fried Addy for about 2-3 minutes, crisp them up. Those are some real nice chicken wings.
All right. I feel like the conversation shouldn't have gone to chicken wings. I feel like it needs to go to what do you dip attendee in? What's the
Oh
best
yeah, that's a good call.
sauce for attendee?
My answer depends upon the tendy style. Okay, if we're just doing a classic
All right.
Southern fried chicken tender,
Mhm.
that's different. Now I do like a buffalo chicken tender as well. So are we talking just classic Southern fried chicken tenders?
Sure.
Okay.
Whatever one you want to
Yeah.
talk about, man. If
Yeah.
it's chicken
I'm
and it's breaded, what are you dipping it in? You know what I mean? It's a
typically,
boneless chicken.
yeah, I like honey mustard. I'm a honey mustard dude.
All right.
I'm kind of a ranch guy, regardless of whether it's buffalo or not.
Mm,
Is how I like the tendies, and the second choice being a decent barbecue sauce.
Fair. I like sriracha, like
mm,
like mayo or sriracha ranch or something like that. Or a lot of times what I'll do is get like a pepper ranch or like a blackened ranch, like a something like that, like a spicy ranch, and then I'll throw in some hot sauce too. I like that.
Yeah,
Like I'll take
yeah,
like a
that's a good
habanero
mix.
based hot sauce and just pop it in there.
hmm I like that. I like that. I do have to like argue, Pink man. I can't believe you dip your buffalo into ranch. Blue cheese or die, man.
Blue
I'm a blue
cheese.
All
cheese
right.
guy all day.
Blue
Yeah.
I
cheese.
mean, this may go on a while, but I have some issues with blue cheese. I love blue cheese.
Is it the mold?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't even bug me. But there are certain blue cheese, like pre-made blue cheese or whatever, that to me it tastes exactly like car paint smells. Like that smell of if you're, spray painting a car, right? It's that same flavor, and I don't know what the difference is. So when I find a good blue cheese, oh yeah, absolutely blue cheese all day long, love it. but just struggle to find one that doesn't have that paint taste to me.
Hmm.
I've looked this up, see if it's some weird genetic thing, like what is it?
Cilantro.
Cilantro, yeah, see if it's something like that, but I've not had any luck finding that. I think I'm just
Damn,
weird.
man. Sorry about your taste buds.
I
But
know, right? Yeah. But if it's a good blue cheese though, man, oh yeah, I'll wait a blue cheese.
yeah. All right, let's do this. I also, I have to start today's show by just saying welcome everybody to another episode of the Hackle Box. Glad to have you guys here. It is my favorite holiday of the year. It's March Madness, and so I'm going to be honest. So I did turn off my TV so I can focus on our conversation today. I don't know if all of us did though.
I will in 1 minute and 41 seconds.
All
So,
right.
yeah.
Cool. I think we got a fun show lined up for you guys today. Let's just dig right in. You guys cool with that?
Let's do it.
All right. So a couple of articles came out, and I thought we'd retouch on this topic. I know we've talked about AI and LLM models a little bit on here before, and it was just interesting to see that some of those predictions that we've talked about, I know I have a talk I do on this as well, like we're starting to see kind of come into play and come to fruition right now. So there's 2 articles published in the last week or so. One essentially is focused on the risks involved with ChatGPT plugins. So some researchers discovered a large volume of flaws in ChatGPT plugins. These flaws could lead to account takeover, access to PII, all those fun things. And this is an interesting topic to start with too, because there are so many AI-driven plugins out there on the market today, and I think it's really hard for people to discern like what's safe, what isn't safe, and even further from that, like what's real and what isn't real, because a lot of these plugins aren't even real plugins at all. They're just malware, and you're loading malware onto your systems. So I'll stop there and just open the dialogue to you guys. Are you surprised to see this? Just give me your thoughts.
I mean, my first thought is that you said LLM model, and I don't like that. It's like ATM machine. You can't do that. It's an LLM or an LL model. You know what I mean? Like it's one of the two.
That's
That's my
totally
first
fair.
thought.
This guy.
But then my second thought.
This guy. I'm gonna mute him. Just get him out of here.
Yeah, I hate when people leak their PII information. You know what I mean? Just saying. No, I am I surprised? No, not at all. Right. I think whenever we see things that get a ton of attention, kind of change a landscape a bit. I mean, I think LLMs are part of that. I think like when smartphones first started coming out and apps were coming out like crazy, nobody's paying enough attention to the security of new things and new like landscape changes, to kind of the technology. And so they're growing way faster than they can pay attention to what they're doing. And you can't I think when things grow that fast, it's hard to like really have someone who's looking at it enough and paying enough attention and doing that kind of stuff and making sure that everything that's coming out is secure and that people can trust what's out there and a marketplace around that. And so, no, it's not surprising at all to me. I think it's the concern we had the moment we saw it start coming out too, for that matter. So,
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, not surprised at all, but also think it's probably going to get a lot of people, right? I mean, because of the same reasons there. People are excited about this, they want to try it out, and then also, hey, how can we tie this thing into something else we're doing, right? So, is there a plug-in for that, or is there some kind of a API type connection between the two, different things like that they're going to try to do? So I think it's reasonably dangerous. I mean, it's not crazy dangerous. Hopefully, folks are paying attention and not using, not dropping sensitive information into these anyway. But I do worry about, honestly, things like custom security tools and things like that. Maybe they're using a plugin to tie things over and they're feeding in events or something like that, that may have sensitive info.
I think it's a big thing too that's concerned me a lot going into this. I think when these LLMs came out, when ChatGPT really was kind of like charging forward with that, but everybody's just been branching on that, making more. Everybody wants to have their own LLM. Everybody wants to be syncing in or bringing it in, using it as part of some kind of offering to take it to the next level. It's like, hey, that's how your offering is 2024, right? I mean, it's got AI built in, baby, And I
Yep.
think that we see it in security tools, we see it in marketing tools, we see it in sales tools, we see it in client relations tools. We see like everything is wanting to pull this in and help you be more efficient, help you take your data and show it to you in a way or classify it in a way that is more useful and more readily available. And when we do that, because everybody wants to implement it, you can almost not avoid it. And we're getting more and more. I mean, like,
Yeah.
you know, Outlook now's got AI LLM stuff built into it. So it's like, how do I even prevent my emails from being part of this? You know what I mean? Like we start to grow so fast that our data we can't even personally make a choice to keep our data out of it. It's concerning.
Reminds
For
me
sure.
of,
And
there
that
was
was
a
one of the
funny, just real quick, I'm sorry, very aside, but there was a really funny cartoon that came out back around the time that the iPhone was getting big, and it was like these two little characters, and they were talking with someone at the AT&T store, and it just kept saying, "Yeah, but does it have the Wi-Fi's and the 3Gs?" And like I feel like that's where we're at with AI right now. It's like everybody's like, "Well, does it have the AIs? Can we get the AIs in it?" And so I think,
Mhm.
kind of along those same lines.
Yeah, 100%. Like that was one of the points I wanted to talk about today. I'm glad that we got there this quickly, but it's just we're at a point right now where this has been the buzzword, and like Eric calls out in the chat again, like the marketing buzz. Everybody sees this, and a lot of people don't really understand what it is. Right? There's certainly a gap in understanding in what these models can do and are efficient at doing today. But because it is such a marketing buzz, all of these vendors and providers have just hopped on board, and we've seen, like, if you guys remember Zoom last year, they announced, right, they would be using an AI model to ingest all of our calls and use that for training the model. And then everybody said, wait, hold on. And so Zoom did reverse that. I'm not sure what their plans are moving forward. So they said it's an opt-in program now, I think, instead of being forced upon you. But like every tool we look at, like Salesforce, right, there's AI modules that are being laid on top of that. Like Eric called out, like in Outlook, Azure AI, Microsoft Copilot, like it's almost unavoidable right now. So what can we do to protect ourselves in those environments where we have no choice, right? These models, our data is going to be used for learning for the AI model.
Yep. Yeah, whether you like it or not,
hmm So
essentially.
another point I did want to bring up is kind of related to this too, just to see the value in these LLMs is, like, I'm sure you guys have heard, Reddit's going public, right? And I think that's happening soon. I don't know if you guys have seen the valuation of Reddit, and I've had some conversation with folks, and they're curious about, like, how could this website essentially be valued at this number, but they're valued currently at about $6.4 billion, right? And from what I can understand, it's because it's one of the largest data sets in the world, right? And so people want this to go public because all that data that's in Reddit is essentially going to be used to train AI models. Now, we can talk about the implications of that later, because if we look at like data poisoning and bias introduction into the models, well, Reddit training is a great way to introduce that. But regardless, the fact it is one of the largest data sets of human interactions that's available on the planet today. So it's very valuable. Why? To train these models.
Sorry, but so we're going to go from generative AI to degenerative AI. Is that the plan? We're going to degen AI, basically.
Yeah.
But we don't already.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's not a knock on Reddit. I use Reddit all the time because it's a very good source of information. But yeah.
I'm honestly
Yeah.
surprised it didn't get valued higher.
Yeah, I had read, so they started to do this a couple of years ago, right? And then it was about the time when we were on the verge of a possible recession, and I think they stopped the movement for IPO. But I think at that time it was valued at $10 billion. So I'm a little surprised that it's decreased in value from then till now. I don't understand why. Maybe it's just a shift in the economy today. But regardless, I think for a lot of folks, like, still seeing it at $6.4 billion, like, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, a lot for a website. But then I look at like the fact that Microsoft was trying to buy Discord for 10 billion a few years ago, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's a big thing. Discord's huge, right? As far as a chat service and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that used by people, but it's also like there are other ones. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
There isn't
Yeah.
really another Reddit,
Yeah,
So that's what
that's
kind of
true.
yeah. So
Yeah, so I did spend a little bit of time today because I am using no AI plugins right today, and so the focus started here was on AI plugins. Like, what kind of plugins are people actually utilizing today? And it was kind of interesting. So one of the most popular ones is called AI Quest, which is a plugin so you can play text-based adventure games. Sounds kind of fun. Another one is like a review summary. So if you're too lazy to Google, right? Hey, I'm thinking about buying this product. Can you go pull in all the review data, and it'll present to you the summary of all the review data that's out there. A similar one for A to Z video summary. Like, all these things just seem funny to me because it's like, oh, you're too lazy to go search for YouTube for a video. You just put in a description of the video you're looking for, and it will search YouTube for you and find the most appropriate video based upon your request. Kayak, right? So, online vendor for flights, hotels, and cars. Like, they have a plugin to help you make travel easier. They're all just kind of either fun tools or automation tools to make our life a little bit easier. And so we want to try to think about why these are becoming so popular outside of the buzz. When people identify, oh, there's ways that I can make things that are already easy even easier for me, sure, I'm on board, right? And I think that's just kind of a trend of humans in general.
Yeah, it calls back to the thing Eric mentioned earlier about phones and apps and everything, right? I mean, you remember the first few batches of apps that came out, they were just the same way to do a bunch of other different stuff, right? So makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
so
the
go
buzz
ahead.
of it all too just makes it so that like even if it actually isn't more convenient or actually any better, people still think it is, right? Gonna
Right,
try it out,
right.
gonna give it a shot, gonna see. It's got to be better. It's AI, like
Yeah.
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 Yeah. No,
It
and
reminds
like,
me, you guys remember Let Me Google That For You, right? So this is just
mhm.
Let Me Google That For You.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically. Yeah. Yeah. I kind of knew we were heading down this path last, like 4th of July, because no shot at my family or anything like that. But if I'm at a 4th of July picnic with my family and they're all playing with ChatGPT on their phone and showing it, right? Like, I know we're in for a whole bunch of things to come out of that, right? So it's like
Mhm,
the new fun thing.
mhm,
Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
I'm curious to see how it changes us as a society in general as it becomes more and more popular. I have friends already that like in this space, in the red teamy space and stuff. I have some friends who are pen tester types, but maybe a little bit out of touch with it. Maybe they moved on to management positions, stuff like that. Maybe they were never big coders, but they're like wanting to dabble in stuff still. And I have some that message me and they're just like, hey, I ran this through Chat GPT to tell it how to make my code better, how to make it more stealthy, how to do all this stuff. And I think that there's like some benefits and not just that obvious concept, but that saying,
mhm,
hey, let me use these LLMs to help me with gaps in my knowledge, right? I think there's value in that, but at the same time, is it making us? I mean, it's making us more lazy. It's not even a question, right? Instead of going out and saying, "Let me fill that gap in my knowledge. Let me stay on top of this. Let me learn about the ways to maybe be more stealthy in my malware development or whatever it might be. Let me, whatever." We're taking that shortcut, and now we're gonna get dumber over time. I mean, like we really will if we keep taking shortcuts in certain areas. And so, what does that lead
mhm,
to? And how much
mhm,
like idiocracy is it at the end?
mhm,
That is the concern, right? Because theoretically it should move things along faster, right? Because we don't have to spend that time learning how to do the thing. We can use that time, take the time we save and use it to learn something else or whatever. Like that's always the dream. But then yeah, then you end up with that situation where nobody knows how to fix the Roomba that's just banging up against the wall saying your floor's now clean, right? Because we've all just, I don't know, the AI did it. So there is a worry there for that,
I,
definitely.
I think you bring up a really good point there. Right? We spend less time learning, but however, I think that we have research to prove this now. Like when you have the ability to have access to a large volume of information, so you don't have to focus that time to be able to learn that, then we retain much less, right? And so it's kind of dangerous in that sense. Like we have more and more data and learning opportunities at our fingertips, so therefore we do not have to take the time to commit that to memory. And so I think we're going to see like our ability to retain information continue to decrease, and we've already seen, like this is well known as well, right? The average attention span of humans has decreased drastically. And then we look at the way we're consuming content today, right? So like you think about 10 years ago or greater, I know me personally, like it was typically I want to read the content, right? So I'm reading this content, especially if I'm trying to learn. Well, that then shifted into like, hey, I don't want to read the content anymore. I want to watch a video. So the video teaches me the content. And that's even shifted again now with like TikTok and shorts and all these things where it's like, I don't want to watch a 10-minute video anymore. I want a 60-second clip to teach me what I'm trying to learn. And I think that same pattern we're going to see kind of apply to the implementation of these AI models in everyday life.
Mhm. Yeah.
And to bring it back to security, that's dangerous for us, right? Because
Mhm,
it's pretty easy to get into the mode of like, this thing is bad and not really care why it's bad.
mhm,
We just know it's bad. We want to stop it or whatever. So, and it's really important to know why it's bad. What is it doing? That kind of thing. So, yeah, that is a
mhm,
little bit of a worry for even like our group long term.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the knowledge and whatever equivalent of headline clickbait type media. It's like some people read headlines and that's what they take away from it. They don't even read the article anymore, right? You have a YouTube short that tells you something is the case with security or whatever it is, and that's, I mean, how many people right now think that Flipper Zero is like the most dangerous hacking tool in the world? You know what I mean? Like, and it's not even remotely the case, you know. Like, when people want to ban it, they're all up in arms about the security implications of this thing because they saw a couple YouTube shorts or TikTok videos, you know what I mean? And it's wild because people don't want to ingest more information than that. So
I like, Pinky's point too about how, like, I don't know, I think we're getting to is like we'll have this eventually an over reliance on the technology, right? So we implement all these tools. It's doing the job for us. So if we're running a SOC now, and we have AI-driven tools that are analyzing SOC data now, we become very reliant on that tool to identify the anomalies and the possible detections. And then we begin to assume this is truth, right? This is everything. It is comprehensive. And so we lose our skill set to be able to manually investigate these events as they occur because we're relying on a tool. And then we lose our ability to differentiate what's a false positive, what's a true positive, and how do we tune these systems so they can be more effective to our organization. And I think it's just, again, like this over reliance on the technology can have negative implications.
yeah, I mean, easy button type stuff in general, right? People have been trying to, it's been more and more and more as we go on. People want to buy a fix versus learn and implement a fix.
Hopefully, we're not just three old guys shaking our fist at the sky right now about this, but I do have concerns about it, But
well, I got to imagine people here listening and whatnot probably feel the same way about some things too. I think people who generally are thinking about and want to participate in security conversation in general are probably the types who are concerned about the same things. That it's not about just finding this thing to click and install, and it's going to fix your problem. So.
I'm getting more and more questions. I don't know about you guys when I have interactions with clients and speaking events and things like that about like, hey, tell me the AI tools that you recommend for monitoring my networks, for monitoring my security events and things like that. And it's really hard. Like, I don't have experience, right? I haven't tested or used any of these tools today. It's just based on what I see. However, I can tell them, like, you look at all the major players, kind of like we mentioned before, like Splunk, for example, even Elasticsearch, like all these tried and true tools that we would use before for analyzing large volumes of data. Well, they now have an AI module built in on top of those. And I think pretty much every tool that's been in this space, like, that's the thing, because it is the marketing buzz, they're going to be introducing some sort of AI engine to have the ability to enrich the capabilities of their tools. But for me, like, I don't know, like, I don't have any experience to be able to say Splunk's better than Elastic and their model is better because of this. And we still don't fully understand, like, the implications. And what scares me based on tools that I've reviewed for us is when I really look at the data privacy for what they're doing with that learning data, right? So are you using this for learning in your model? Are you taking my data out of my implementation? And if you're using it for learning, that data has to be going into that model, right? So how are you sanitizing my data? What are you doing with that data long term? And really, no one has a good answer in the products that I've reviewed. I don't know if you guys have seen similar.
Well, nobody wants to talk about it, right? That's the secret sauce kind of thing, right? They don't want to get into that, and they also know that it's concerning. So
I think the reality is there's not a secret sauce in a lot of cases, right? And that's why they don't want to talk about it, right? Like,
it's a good point.
We don't know. People are constantly getting access to data we didn't think they'd be able to. I mean, with these things, right? And that's kind of what this started us on this topic, is that people are finding flaws in some of the plugin interfaces and frameworks and stuff like that, right? Around the plugins. But we've been hearing about, and probably talk about again here in a moment, but we've been hearing more and more about constant bypasses on every type of LLM that comes out to be able to pull out system prompts and to pull out some of the data that's behind it, and maybe even in some situations some of the credentials it has access to query some of the databases it gets to and stuff like that. So it's tough.
Yeah, and that leads perfectly into the other topic, the second article that recently was published regarding Gemini, which is Google's LLM, formerly known as Bard. I'm sure you guys have heard of that. But security experts were able to test the platform and determine that it was susceptible to manipulation. And these are things that we talked about in theory, I know, before on here. And so essentially, through manipulating the data model, they were able to generate false information, potentially harmful content, They were able to make it disclose sensitive information that was used to train the model, execute malicious actions, and then even more importantly, they were able to access the system prompts of the model itself, right? So if you can access the system prompts of the model, well, then you can use those prompts to train the model, to change the behavior of the model, the persona of the model, remove constraints that may be implemented for ethics and morals, and really manipulate the learning, which is very dangerous, right? So we're thinking of two things here. One, you're able to get the sensitive data out, and that should be very concerning to all of us on the call today. But then secondly, if you're able to implement changes to the way that model learns, then you have the ability to introduce bias, um, fake information, and potentially dangerous information. I think this is really important because if we look at everything we've learned through like manipulation of humans through false information, specifically in social media, right? We know this is real. This has been happening for a while. And now if we can inject that same sort of poisoning or biased into a large LLM, that could be really dangerous, right?
Yeah, certainly can from that perspective. I just kind of, as we were talking through it there a little bit, I was even thinking just because we are seeing this implemented in all these security tools, can you train it enough to tell it that Cobalt Strike beacon is totally legit, right? That type of thing, right? Are those going to be some of the next sort of bypasses we see for security devices? Is finding a way to hit that and train it in a way that it's beneficial to you as an attacker.
Yeah, 100%. I think if you're able to access those system prompts, you're certainly going to be able to manipulate the tuning of like a detection technology in this point to say, nope, these are false positives or these are benign. This is legitimate traffic. We don't have to worry about those things. And that probably is the evolution of where attackers will head.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting thing. I think when we take a look at LLMs, and different people's implementations of them, they introduce their own biases. Like each company introduces their own biases. Like you can say that when it has system prompts built in that say don't generate false information about an election, or don't teach people things that could be used for creating a bomb or doing things like that. Those are biases. I mean, right? Like we have all kinds of ones. I know that Gemini hit some stuff in the news a while back because it has specific system prompts to diversify images of people, right? And so like if you try to tell it to do something, it'll try to make them of all different types of nationalities, colors, backgrounds, right? Things like that. And then sometimes that is a bias that doesn't make sense to do, right? And so there's a lot of things like that. So we introduce biases all the time in that way. And oftentimes we're talking about like, hey, let's pull out that system prompt. Let's get ways to have it leak its own system prompts and find out what those biases are. And then once knowing the biases, how can we overcome the biases? So there's all of that. But I think there's another conversation too, is this becomes more and more implemented into maybe on-site tooling and things like that. Are there going to be ways that an attacker, once they got inside, could overwrite any of those biases, those system prompts, and make it so that your tool just is flawed now and you don't even realize it because it's a hidden prompt?
Sure.
That thing.
Yep.
I mean, I don't think people are really talking about that yet. It's just something that's occurring to me as we think about these things more and more. Is that going to be a thing down the line when we're not necessarily looking at Google and OpenAI, but we're looking at like the tool that you have inside your own network,
Yeah, and we've already seen like similar things, right? Where you can data poisoning is possible, right? And I think even with like the first iterations of ChatGPT, that was a well-known flaw where it's like it was bad at doing math in some circumstances because it wasn't actually calculating the math. It's lazy. It's looking for a solution that already exists in its learning model. And if that solution already exists, well, it doesn't validate that's the correct solution, right? So it's going to present that solution as if it were, and then people take that information, assume it's correct, and use that in whatever application they're at. So I think certainly that's a true risk.
Yeah, now I'm just thinking about how we're going to threat hunt these things.
You're going to use AI.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to use AI to find the AI. Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. I think too, I always like to close these topics too with like, what can we do? What can you do as a consumer, right? Because this is kind of one of those things. It's coming. There's not a lot we can do about it at this point. So we just need to be aware and protect ourselves. So I don't know. I'll pose a question to you guys. Like, what do we do to protect ourselves here?
Well, I moved into the woods. I don't know about everybody else, but
turn off your computers.
Turn off the computers. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's just going to take
beaches.
It's going to take a lot of testing and a lot of honestly kind of pen testing. I don't know that we want to call it just that, but to see what can be exploited on these things, how can we impact the models, what kind of biases can we introduce or change. And it's going to take a lot of testing, and I worry that we're not going to see that, right? Because that's not a consumer level fix, and I know that's kind of where we're going. It's not a consumer level fix, so it's more of be very, very sure of the thing you're bringing into your system, as sure as you possibly can be, by asking a lot of questions about it before you start using it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's the same advice for everything. Honestly, at the end of the day, don't trust that anything is the silver bullet. Don't trust that anything is secure. Try to have, layers of security built around everything you're doing. And as you have data going into these things, try to ask yourself, what is going on with that? Do we have to use this? Is this opt-in? Can we opt out? Should we opt out? And maybe we need to use some of these tools that are starting to implement these things a little differently, and be careful about the data that goes into them, and careful about the rules and stuff that are around the usage of those things, right? I mean, I think that a lot of people are of that mindset. We've had a lot of people I know reach out to all three of us in some form or fashion, whether it be through our work, or whether it just be in person when we're at things, and talking about like what should my policies be around about AI and LLMs and the usage of those things, right? And so people are thinking about that and wondering about that, and I think that's the right thing to do. Just keep thinking about it, keep wondering about it, keep your eye on it, and and always try to have defense in depth, as is constantly preached in many spaces, definitely ours. Like, don't just trust that one thing's going to do the trick ever in any
Yep.
situation, whether it's an LLM or if it's your wallet. You know what I mean? Like, just don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I support all that. I completely agree. I guess I would just add, like, from a business standpoint, like Eric mentioned, make sure you have that policy. Look at your acceptable use policy and make sure that you've updated your acceptable use policy. Like we always say, train your users, right? And make sure they understand what is appropriate. Have an approval process in place, or if you're working on business assets before you are able to implement these technologies, do your diligence to review that technology and see what risk it poses to your organization. Train your users too. I mean, that's really important. Like, there was a story, if you guys remember, last year, where Samsung, one of their devs had like input all their source code into ChatGPT, and they said, "Oh shit, this is bad. We shouldn't have done that." And they literally just banned all AI technologies in Samsung when that happened. So make sure people know not to put PI in. Don't put your trade secrets in there. Don't put source code and all that good stuff into these tools today. Cool. Before we move on, see Brian Kelly on, and I want to give a shout out to Brian and all the fine folks here at FRSecure, and the other folks who are not at FRSecure that are taking part in our CISSP mentorship program this year. So registration is up. That program is going to be kicking off soon. It's awesome. I think we've already got close to 10,000 registrants this year, which is fantastic. It's absolutely free. Nothing was required. So if you guys are interested in doing that, you can just Google FRSecure CISSP mentorship program. It'll take you right to the page. And then also a shout out to Brad, has been doing a Meet the Mentor series on security. And so if you're curious about some of the instructors that's going to be on there, tune into Unsecurity, and we're going to try to get through most of the instructors on the podcast, so you get a chance to get to know those folks a little bit more. But it's a great thing. I'm super happy we do this. We see that obviously everybody's talking about a gap in information security professionals today in our field, so we're doing what we can to try to close that gap. So sign up if you could use that, or spread the word to maybe somebody who could. Now back to our regularly scheduled program. That was a pretty good commercial spot, right?
Hashtag
You're
ad or
nailing
something
it.
there.
Yeah.
Am I getting paid for this, or what's going on?
Yeah, I'll expect my check later.
All right, cool. So Vishing, another article came out that just kind of identified that sophisticated vishing campaigns have been observed across the world, and maybe a greater frequency than in years past. It's kind of hit the news big a couple years ago. There was one vishing attack that resulted in a doctor sending 4.1 million won, which translates to about $3 million to attackers in combination of cash, insurance, stocks, and crypto. More recently, it kind of hit the news again because a New York Times financial reporter fell victim to a $50,000 vish in February, and they've told their story online. And so just kind of want to talk about vishing in general. We haven't, I don't think, ever covered this on here before. Make sure that you guys are aware that these attacks are going on and understand what you can do to help protect yourself. Eric, what do you think, man? Have you been vished lately? Are you seeing the scenarios evolve, or is it the same old tactics just being replayed over and over?
Yeah, I mean, there's I think that when we look at attacks as a whole, there are a lot of unsophisticated people throwing shotgun in the world, right? Constantly. And then there's a few sophisticated people who really land some big stuff, and maybe they're not shotgunning everyone. They're trying to pick their targets and they're trying to be smart about it. I think this is a thing we see in literally everything. You know what I mean? Not just
Mhm,
Vishing. Vishing is just another one that's like that. I think that we do see um I hear about Vishing stuff all the time.
mhm.
My great uncle is a multimillionaire and he's lost money to Vishing multiple times. He tells me about it and I'm like, "You got Vish, stop doing this." You know what I mean? And it's not like he's losing millions of dollars. He's losing like a $500 here or there to stupid
Mhm,
scams, and I keep trying to educate him, but he's too old to be educated on it or something. I don't know what to tell you. Like I've tried, trust me. But I've heard about these things, and we hear about them all the time. It's these things where someone calls and they're like, "Hey, whatever. Maybe the IRS is looking for money. You mess something up, or it's something silly like whatever other kind of scam.
mhm,
I think in the article that we're kind of talking about here, talking about the high income, the 4.1 billion won or whatever. Like this article talks specifically about a lot of kind of emulation of law enforcement or government and stuff like that, right? And trying to use that kind of scare tactic. And we see that in social
mhm,
engineering in general. There's a lot of different tactics can be used, sympathy or scaring people and things like that, right? And we're going to see more and more of that. But I mean, that doesn't this article reads in a lot of ways like this is new. This isn't new in my opinion.
right.
And it talks about like, oh, they're specifically, they know things about Korea. They're talking about Korea a lot in this, right? They know things about Korea. They're tuning it to
Mhm,
Korean, whatever. And it seems to be more that it's focusing on cultural things and societal norms and all that. But I mean, all the ones we've experienced are like that too. They're associated and specifically around US things. We're talking about like I said, IRS and stuff. So I think these
mhm,
are all very common things. What I'm seeing more of, and what this article talks about more of, is that some of the technologies and the skills around it are becoming a little bit better. They're getting a little bit better about learning how would these government agencies or these law enforcement agencies communicate? How would they do things? What are some of the things that they would say in these in situations to make it more real? Um, they're using applications that they will like sometimes this starts not through the phone call originally, but it's through a malicious application that's been installed on the phone, and then that a phone can actually do different, or that application can do different things to redirect phone calls, and actually you're calling them and getting fished or vished, right? Which is something that a lot of people aren't really thinking about, is the fact that most people, if they receive a call that they're not expecting, are cautious. But if you make a call, all your guards are down, all your walls are down,
mhm.
and so there's a concern there too.
Yeah, and that's
um
kind of what we told people for years, right? Is, if they're calling you, then be extra suspicious, call them back or whatever. And that's not always the case anymore, right? It's not, and I totally agree. I mean, even knowing this, if I'm calling somebody, like I'm generally much less paranoid about it, right?
mhm.
Um, and realistically, most of the vishing attempts that I've gotten have been pretty unsophisticated. They're pretty easy to spot. I mean, I think the most sophisticated one I got was Evan Francine calling to ask me about my car warranty. That was the only one that took me a minute or so to figure out what was going on. But yeah, I mean, they're the incoming ones I have seen anyway have been not great. But yeah, if I'm calling somebody and it's a I assume these apps are redirected or something like that, right? Then that's a
Mhm.
whole different ball game.
Yep. Yeah,
I
I
had a
think that
really funny one a couple weeks ago. I have to share this with you guys. Maybe it's like a month or so ago. I don't know. But they called and it was the Publishers Clearinghouse scam, and
mm,
like, hey, congratulations, you won third place in our Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes, and that was like $100,000, and you also won a brand new 2021 Cadillac CTS. I'm like, I want a brand new Cadillac. He's like, yeah. I was like, I want a brand new 2021 Cadillac. He's like, yeah, you did. I'm like, how did you get a brand new 2021 Cadillac? And then he just hung up on me. Sorry,
yeah,
you're going to say something, Eric. I interrupted you.
I don't even remember what it was, but I will say that I think that when we talk about getting scammed in general, right? Like what they're socially engineered in general, I think there's a lot of people out there who think that they're savvy. They think that they couldn't be. I think I can be. I think everyone on this, all three of us and all of you guys listening, I think everybody here can be. I think that realistically, my wife could scam me so easily because I trust the heck out of her, right? And that's what it really comes down to when it comes to social engineering is the trust you place in certain things, right? Whatever those things are, whether it's the people that are close to you. I mean, how many people here have a rule now in their life where they don't loan money to family over like $50, right? It's because you've been hurt by it. It's because they're close to you and they scammed you at the end of the day, right? Like it's not maybe the intent, but that's what happens. We are vulnerable to these things. We're always going to be vulnerable to these things. And it's about when we have our guards up and when we have our guards down. And I think we need to continue to look at what's out there and realize maybe when our guards should be up more than other times, right? Because everybody can be affected by this stuff. It just depends on where your trust is and who gets into place to violate that trust. There are some people definitely out there who are way more trusting and I just received a phone call and it sounds like I won something and people wouldn't lie to me. But there's a lot of people like myself and, I'm sure Pink and Oscar here who would never trust that, right? But there are some other situations where I might have some trust. There's certain just day-to-day stuff. There's certain societal norms. There's certain things that you haven't thought about. You haven't thought about the implication of someone being involved or getting in the middle of that and taking advantage of that trust. And it can happen to you. And I always try to lead a lot of interactions, especially the moment money gets involved. I like have this switch that goes for me being like, I doubt everything all of a sudden. I ask all the questions. You know what I mean? I question all of it. So I think that that's not bad. It makes me more of a curmudgeon-y fool, but it is what it is.
No, it's fair though. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's all about that trust factor. And I like that Cliff posted in the chat there that remember con is short for confidence, and exactly right. I mean, it's how you use that confidence and who you're talking to and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's big.
Yeah, I'd made a note just thinking about this before we talked to, and it's all the things Eric had touched on there. Like we all have different personality traits, right? And so inevitably, some of us are going to be more vulnerable than other people are, and it really just comes down like to your ability to trust in other people, your general agreeableness, your openness, right? And how self-conscientious are you when in these situations? I think it's easier for us to say like, yeah, we no indicators. We can identify the indicators, right, to be able to determine that this is a fish. But the reality is, like, people that aren't in this and thinking about this every day are very susceptible. If they are generally open, generally agreeable, they want to help, they respect authority, right? And so, like, my mother-in-law was a victim recently, right, and it was really, really upsetting for her. And I think about like, and the tactic or the pretext for her was just like the same old replay where it's just like, hey, there's they actually sent her. It started with a fish, right? And it's like, hey, you have $525 charge posted to your Best Buy credit card or something like that. And so she reacts like, I didn't order anything for Best Buy. And she does have a Best Buy credit card. I mean, they got lucky. They'd spray and pray. And like a lot of people have a Best Buy credit card. And so she immediately calls the number back and they start through the same thing where it's like, well, let's install this application on your phone. She installs the application on her phone. They're like, okay, go ahead and log into your bank account. And luckily for her, she was like, oh, wait, why would I need to log into my bank account? And so she hung up and called me immediately and was literally in tears. And it's like, hey, it's okay. Like everybody gets fished, man. Everybody gets fished. It's going to happen to all of us at some point. At least you recognized it before they got the credentials to your bank account. Like, let's just clean up your phone. Let's reset some passwords and keep an eye on your accounts for a little bit, but you should be good to go. I saw that to say like it may come easy for us and even a lot of people on here, but like it's not the case for likely friends and family and loved ones that you interact with daily.
Yeah, and I think go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say like that same kind of thing. I'm talking about our own vulnerabilities and stuff. I mean, I don't know how many times I've given $5 or $10 to somebody at the gas station pulling the I just need to get home scam, right? Like it's just one of those things. Like I feel bad for the person. I'm going to give them a couple bucks, because I've been in similar situations, right? You broke down or whatever the case may be, and you just you feel for that person a little bit. But I mean, even when I'm doing it, I'm like, yeah, this is probably not what this is, but yeah, here's what it is.
I think there's those lines to draw in general.
I'm from the camp too. That's on them, not you, if they are lying.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's those times where you go like you're not trying to let the world turn you into a cold person at the same time. You're like, can I spare $5? Whether this person wants it to scam me, they want to buy drugs with it, they're going to buy gas with it, they need a burger. I don't know what they're going to use it for, but can I spare $5? Yeah, I'm gonna still be a warm person where I can, and I'm just not going to give them $5,000.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us talking about this too just kind of really drives home that when you're talking to other people, whether it's your family members or you're doing training for employees and stuff, try to focus on the concepts around it and like some of the things like Oscar giving the example that like as soon as she was asked to log into her bank account, that was weird. Let me step back. Like try to teach the indicators of concern as more so than the look for this link type of thing, right? Like look for the URL, look for this. You didn't expect it, whatever. Those are all great things, but also just be teaching the additional things to detect it down the road. At any point, yes, someone might get so far in that fish social engineering engagement that they get to a point where they're like, oh no, this is bad. Hopefully they get there, right? Like if they have those other tools in their pocket, something will trigger, something will tell them this is not good, and they'll start to actually ask for help and get help. And then when we're talking about corporate environments or organizations like that, obviously, celebrate the people that did ask for help or celebrate the people who brought it up, no matter how far they went down that line. Do not ever approach them like they did something wrong. They did something right. They let you know.
Absolutely.
100%. Yep. So to tie this back into our earlier conversation, I did want to bring up or just ask you guys, how do you think AI is playing into phishing, right? So there's some obvious things I think that we've already looked at, like how phishing is getting better because it's easy to get a transcript, right? That's in sound language. There's no indicators that this is broken language like it used to be. Those days are gone. It can construct very believable transcripts for the emails now. Imagine that's going to be impacting vishing as well. Then the other thing I think about is just voice deepfakes, right? So whereas before maybe you're, coming from another part of the world and you're targeting me through a vish, well, I can obviously have an indicator. Maybe you sound different. You don't sound like you are who you're representing at that point. But as we see the introduction of voice deepfakes, do you guys think that's going to have a significant impact on these attacks moving forward as well? And what else do we think could be impacted from technology as we continue to move forward?
Yeah, the voice defects is exactly where I went with it. I mean, and even thinking about, we spend an hour a month on here talking. There's a lot of clips of our voice out there. So, if we call you up asking you for a password, maybe you don't trust us. But yeah, that's exactly where I went with it. I think that's with the ability to generate a script and then feed that script to something to build a voice deepfake. I think you're going to have a lot of trouble out of this. I think it's going to be way more successful for the attackers.
Yeah, I mean, I think the deepfake thing is a concern for sure. I mean, I just think too, you have look, one of the things that triggers us, whether it's right or not, the biases that we have and stuff like that, is that accents and stuff like that. Someone who doesn't sound like they're the person who I would expect to be making this phone call, right? Having you don't even have to have a voice deepfake. You can just have some of the AI voices that you can use these days that sound like normal people now, right? It doesn't sound like a robot anymore necessarily. We celebrate it when our GPS sounds like a person, but we're not going to be celebrating it so much when it sounds like there's an actual person telling these things to us that are scamming us, right? There's obviously those types of things. I think the other side too is we talked about how people are getting better about imitating the or yeah, imitating kind of like the way law enforcement or the government would talk about things. I mean, I think AI can help with that too. I think that there's a lot of data that needs to be sifted through to understand what that might look like, or at least have a believable pretext in some ways and believable kind of protocol for handling some of this stuff. And I'm sure that that can be generated much faster by an LLM than by Googling around, So I think it's helping with the pretext generation in general too.
Yeah, 100%. This is kind of funny. Was Pinky, you brought up, if somebody wants to deepfake our voices or even our video, it'd be rather simple. There's tons of content online. It wouldn't be hard to do. And I know Brian Kelly threw in the chat earlier that, he and a lot of people knows, so just don't answer calls from unknown numbers anymore. And I try to do that best I can, but there's some situations where I have to answer my phone, right? And I know that if I'm expecting a call for something either business related or even like, hey, right now I got a tractor sitting in my front yard for sale with for sale sign on. It's got my phone number on there. So if somebody calls, I'm probably going to answer that. But I actually got a call earlier from Zach Hale, who used to be our legal assistant, and he was in the office. So he called me and it showed up as a private number. And I was like, it's kind of odd, but I'm going to answer it anyway, just to see. And so I do this thing always. When I answer the phone from an unknown number, I use a silly voice. And my thought was like, oh, if I am getting scammed here, I'm not going to give them, my true voice so they can take that to build a soundboard or deep fake me later. So I always am like, yellow, something silly, you know. But then the reality is like, that's so dumb. Like my voice is everywhere. People can get my voice anyway. But it was funny. Like Zach called me and I'm like, yellow. And he starts laughing. He's like, "What's wrong with you?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's you. Why are you calling from a private number, man?" It's like, "I'm in the office. My bad."
Do the same thing though. I jam I always like, hello. Like I just do a real quick like
Mhm.
it's kind of hello, but also kind of a grunt, and I mean
Yeah.
it's fairly pointless, but it's just I've gotten in the habit of doing it over the years for that exact reason.
Mhm.
I don't do this at all.
Sometimes
I'm on the opposite side of the board. You guys are out there trying to prevent people from making deep voice or deep fake voices. I have actively been trying to get my voice as one that I could use so I don't have to have calls anymore. I want to
Yeah.
type in
Smart, yeah.
messages and have it call people
Yeah.
for me. So like we're
Yeah.
completely opposite sides of the spectrum right now.
Mhm.
I mean, you know,
I
hey, man, whatever works for you.
told the red team here that I was tempted to make one and then give it to them so that they could just generate quotes of me saying whatever they wanted. You know what I mean? Like that way I have the full on. I never said that. I mean, like everybody knows that there's
Yeah.
versions of me saying all kinds of things out there now. I've been deep faked out to the wazoo, right? So like now, if I say anything, I make a claim that I'll have that for you by the end of the week. Like I didn't say that. That was a deep fake.
You probably should have shared this on
I'm
this
playing
call.
mind games.
But
I'm
Yeah.
playing mind games right now. All right. I want you guys to imitate my voice anywhere you can. So
yeah, I mean, I like it, but yeah, maybe play that one a little close to the vest there, Eric. Not share it
no,
with the president of the company here. You
I
know,
could share it with
say
everyone. It doesn't matter if it gets out there and it happens. I still get to say it wasn't me. Pull
that's
the
true.
shaggy
That's
on
true.
you. It wasn't me.
I support this. Let's do it. All right, cool. We're about out of time. We had one more quick topic I think we can touch on just a few minutes here, but um nothing new, right? So I feel like fishing, like it's been going on for years and years, obviously. Just having some focus in the news about it. We've also seen typosquatting and subdomain takeovers popping up in the news a lot recently. Just kind of wanted to touch on that so you guys are all aware. Like um those attacks are still going on. Nothing new, essentially. It's an old technique that still thrives. And it essentially is relying upon humans making mistakes. I know we've talked about here before with like the Python repositories being um, targeted, right? So misspellings of Python repositories. Really just kind of wanted to put that out because I think it's good hygiene for everybody to be monitoring your domains, looking at some tools like URL Crazy or DNS Twists to identify if you have typosquatting domains that have been registered. I know there's some paid services now. I think OpenDNS does domain monitoring, Google DNS does domain monitoring. Domain tools, Fishhot. There's a ton, right? I don't know if you guys have any other ones you want to add, but really just a PSA. You should be monitoring those domains, and if they are registered, block them. Don't let those emails come into your network. Even block the URLs outbound as well. And honestly, like I recommend to people, like domains are so damn cheap. If there are good typosquatting domains that are available and haven't been registered yet, buy them up, right? It's a minimal investment, and it can do great wonders in protecting your environment.
And you can use those tools to figure out if those are still available too, right? So,
Mhm.
yeah, that's always a good call because it's very effective. I mean, from what we've seen, we work cases all the time where it's been a typo-squatted domain where someone's fished. Usually we see it with phishing a lot, but yeah, it's yeah, pretty effective technique.
Mhm.
And if you find some good type of squat domains that are available for your organization and you're just not feeling like up for the task, let me know. I'll buy them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not going to use it for anything malicious at all. It's 100% just to be a good citizen.
Yeah.
We're somewhat of domain investors over here, I would say.
I definitely own way too many domains right now.
Yeah.
Constantly.
I gotta give my wife Erica credit. Like she's always just thinking of clever domain names and buying them up, And so she's got a treasure trove of domains right now. We're just waiting for something to hit. It'll happen sooner or later. But
Kind of inspiration.
yeah.
We're gonna use this one day. It's cool.
Yeah, 100%. Or someone's gonna want this one day, right?
Yeah, I've got a couple that I've got stashed that at least the estimated value of them or whatever is pretty good. But then at the same time, I'm sitting here going like, I've had these for 10 years, and how much am I paying a year for it? Am I
Yeah.
starting to approach the value or not? So
Yeah, I'm not doing it to make money. I'm just doing it in case I want to use it one day.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna use
No, I
this.
got you.
It'll happen.
Yeah, we got a
It's
bunch
worth
of
the
those too.
it's worth the investment.
So yeah, just be
Well,
careful with
cool.
those. Hey,
Yeah.
you wanna talk about that other thing for 5 minutes?
What was that? Oh yeah, yeah. You cue us up, man. I didn't even have it on my
Yeah.
notes, but
So this one's just a fun one, and I mean, there's not a lot to get into with it. Just more like there are a lot of implications to what this could mean. But I mean, I think a lot of folks have been aware of the Alpha V group, also known as Black Cat's ransomware as a service group. Pretty gnarly, been really active over the last year in particular. And so, allegedly, at least from what we can tell, in a large attack recently, a ransom was paid. And the way those work is that since it's ransomware as a service, there's an affiliate group who actually did the attack, right? They're the ones who hold the keys, they generally hold the data, that kind of thing. And then you're using the ransomware as a service infrastructure for this kind of thing. So it looks like the ransomware as a service group, Alpha V, took off with the money uh, and did not let the affiliate group have that money to the tune of about $22 million. And then they just kind of disbanded. So, what do you guys think that means moving forward in that space?
what? You mean threat actors aren't trustworthy? Ransomware groups aren't trustworthy? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, but I mean, it's the implications of like, what does this mean for other ransomware as a service operators, right? Is
Mhm.
that trust amongst the thieves going to go down?
Yeah.
Um, and sort of does this upset the apple cart quite a bit on that
Oh,
front?
100%. It's going to be trust erosion, right? And so, like, hey, I feel bad for the victims here, obviously,
Yeah,
and their situation because the actual affiliate still has their data, right? And so they never got paid. So they're probably going to hold on to that data or release that data, and that's a bad day. They're probably not going to get their decryption keys, and that's a bad day. But however, I think we almost fell into this pattern. We've seen it, man. You can tell everybody more than I can about it, but like when we engage insurance companies now, right? An insurance company comes into a ransomware incident and they're like, okay, cool, let's pay it. Let's get you guys back online. And this is exactly why that's a poor model and we shouldn't be approaching things that way. So I think this is really good for the general public to see like, no, there is no trust. You're dealing with criminals, you're dealing with terrorists. And so this will hopefully kind of be a pilot to begin that erosion in the public eye, erosion
yeah.
of trust.
To be fair, like we even us for years, at least early on in kind of the ransomware days, we're like, yeah, if you pay the ransom, they're probably going to do what they say because it's a reputational based business. But now
Mhm.
these groups are splitting apart and renaming and things so often that that's just not the case anymore. And I think they're realizing that that's the
Mhm.
case. Like they can just kind of get away with whatever now. And so,
Mhm.
and beyond holding their data, the thing I worry about a lot with this is the persistence. I would assume that the affiliate group has the persistence. So if they're not
Mhm.
investigating fully, not eradicating fully, then they're going to want to get paid because they got cheated out of money, by their other criminals. So
Mhm.
what happens there? That's one of the things I worry about with that particular one.
Yeah, so did they get decryptors? I don't think they got decryptors either, right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know the details on it.
Mhm.
Well, if it's through the
It's
Yeah.
ransom as a
pretty hush
service, they
hush.
probably the affiliate probably didn't do the ransom themselves, right? Or am I missing the tie in here? Normally the affiliates are the ones that bring the original breach, right?
Yeah, but then they run the encryptors or whatever. They're in there. They're doing the damage. At least
Oh,
as
they
far
are.
as
Okay,
I
okay.
understand. And the service groups are just providing like the chat infrastructure, the negotiation, the payment
The
Okay.
handling, that
toolkits.
There's
the
a couple different ways
toolkits.
it goes down sometimes, so I wasn't sure which one side
Yeah.
we were talking about
Mhm.
here. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they very well might not out of. I think just on the topic though of the implications of this and where it goes, I agree with where you were going with this, Oscar, that dissolving of that trust in this is generally going to be a pretty good thing for society.
Mhm.
I think that that is something that the average person doesn't realize. Like people that work in security might realize it, but the average person, when I talk to people in an airport randomly or something, and they find out what I do when we're talking, and they ask about this kind of stuff, or we get on the subject, what a lot of people don't realize is how big of a deal trust and reputation is for ransomware gangs or whatever you want to call them,
Mhm.
ransomware as a service and these groups. This is it and as Pink had said, like back in the day, you'd always say, well, yeah, I mean, and even today, you say, yeah, if you pay them, they're probably going to do what they said they would do because it is reputational. It is a big deal. They do not they have to worry about their PR. It's kind of
Mhm.
interesting how much of a business this actually is and how much they have to pay attention to that. And that's one of the things I think that works against it. And they know that they take advantage of that. Like if we are trustworthy, if we do what we say, if we have a good reputation, people will pay us more often. And we, and then in general, like people paying them is not a good thing, right? It keeps this keep going. So if we can see an erosion of that trust, see an erosion of those reputations, I'm all for it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's, yeah, sure, there's going to be some people who pay and don't get their stuff, and that sucks that they're a victim in that situation. But we want to see people not relying on the fact that they can pay and get the stuff back. We want to see them doing the right thing, getting their security in the right place, getting their backups correct, and taking care of these things and being able to recover on their own without having to pay this. And if an erosion leads to people thinking about doing that more than paying, I'm all for it.
Yeah, agreed.
Completely agree. Cool. Well, thanks, guys. This has been a lot of fun. Thanks for everybody for joining us again. Hope you guys all have a wonderful weekend. See you next month. And
no.
Go Cats, baby. Go Cats.
Yeah,
Come on, Wyatt.
Oh, hey, just to get it on public record too, Tennessee lost pretty badly earlier, so.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. See you guys.
See you guys.
Bye.